My mother-in-law faked terminal cancer to steal our Italy vacation fund, but she forgot one tiny detail in her hospital photo. I was staring at the high-resolution reflection of an intravenous fluid bag perfectly mirrored in the double-paned window of a hospital waiting room, my forensic nurse instinct screaming as I realized that the chemotherapy pumping into my mother-in-law's veins was actually a $60 hangover cure. She wasn't dying of stage 4 lung cancer. She was actively trying to steal our $15,000 anniversary fund to buy herself a completely new body in a Mexican resort town. To understand the absolute, unadulterated evil of this woman's manipulation, you have to understand what that money meant to me and my husband, David. I am a forensic nurse examiner. My entire career is built on analyzing trauma, reading microscopic physical evidence, and sitting across from people who lie for a living. I spend my 12-hour shifts documenting blunt force injuries, running sexual assault kits, and testifying in court. It is a grueling, soul-crushing job that drains every ounce of my humanity. To survive the psychological toll, David and I spent exactly 10 years meticulously saving for our dream 10-year anniversary trip, a massive, no-expense spared, 3-week trek across the Amalfi Coast in Italy. We sacrificed. We skipped dinners out, we drove rusted, 10-year-old sedans, and I picked up brutal night shifts in the ER just to pad the savings account. We had finally hit our goal of $15,000. The non-refundable flights were booked. The cliffside villas in Positano were secured. We were exactly 2 weeks away from our departure date. Then, Brenda called an emergency family dinner. Brenda was David's mother, a woman who operated under the delusion that she was the main character in a tragic soap opera, demanding constant adoration and financial tributes from her family. We met her at a high-end Italian restaurant downtown. She showed up wearing a heavy, dramatic black shawl, looking intentionally pale, her eyes darting nervously around the room. She barely touched her expensive sea base. She waited until the plates were cleared, let out a theatrical, shuddering sigh, and reached across the table to grab David's hands. Tears began to stream down her heavily powdered cheeks. She looked David dead in the eye and dropped the anvil. She had stage 4 terminal lung cancer. The doctors had given her less than 6 months to live. I watched the blood instantly drain from my husband's face. He let out a choked, devastated gasp, his hands shaking violently as he gripped his mother's fingers. My own heart plummeted into my stomach. Despite our rocky relationship, a terminal diagnosis is a horrific tragedy. But my grief lasted exactly 30 seconds before my clinical training kicked in. Brenda, I am so incredibly sorry, I said softly, my mind already racing through oncology protocols. Who is your oncologist? Have they placed a port yet? What kind of cell carcinoma did the biopsy show? Brenda's tearful eyes snapped toward me, instantly hardening into defensive slits. It's highly aggressive and extremely complicated, Leah. You wouldn't understand the specific terminology. The traditional doctors here have basically given up on me. They want to pump me full of poison and send me home to die. She turned back to David, her voice dropping into a desperate, pleading register. But there is hope, Davy. I found a highly exclusive, experimental holistic trial in Switzerland. They specialize in advanced cell regeneration. They have an 80% cure rate for my exact stage. But my insurance won't cover a dime. They need $15,000 wired by Friday to secure my spot in the trial. The exact amount of our vacation fund. Not 14,000. Not 16. Exactly 15. The coincidence was entirely too perfect, and my internal lie detector alarm started blaring at deafening volumes. I opened my mouth to ask for the name of the clinic, but Brenda preempted me, unleashing the ultimate guilt trip. I know you two have your little Italy trip coming up, Brenda sobbed, squeezing David's hand so hard her knuckles turned white. And I would never ask this if my life wasn't literally on the line. But David, if you go to Europe to drink wine while I'm dying, you're essentially pulling the plug on your own mother. Intermission. If she thought weaponizing her own mortality was going to make me blindly hand over our life savings, she severely underestimated what I do for a living. Over the next few days, this terminal diagnosis was about to unravel in the most spectacular, humiliating way possible. She was going to make one catastrophic, arrogant mistake in a single photograph, a mistake that would trigger a full-blown forensic deep dive. For full version follow on-screen instructions. I felt the heat rising in my neck and my vision went blurry with rage. The sheer, predatory emotional blackmail was sickening. I looked at David. He was completely broken, tears openly streaming down his face. He wasn't seeing the inconsistencies. He was just a terrified son watching his mother beg for her life. "We'll give you the money," he hissed, glaring at me defensively before I could even utter a single single syllable of protest. "We'll cancel the trip. We'll do whatever it takes, Mom." The drive home was a suffocating, silent nightmare. The moment the front door clicked shut, the dam broke. I didn't yell, but my voice trembled with a terrifying, absolute certainty. I told him we were not wiring a single dime until I saw her medical records, her pathology reports, and the admission paperwork for this supposed Swiss clinic. I told him a stage 4 lung cancer diagnosis without a biopsy, a PET scan, or a designated oncologist was medically impossible. "She is dying, Leah," he screamed, his face flushed red with grief and anger, pacing the length of our living room. "She is my mother. How can you be so cold, so clinical? She doesn't have time for a massive forensic audit. She needs treatment. I am a nurse, David," I yelled back, my hands shaking. "I know what terminal cancer looks like, and I know what a scam looks like. People do not get diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer at a routine checkup without a single symptom, and legitimate Swiss medical trials do not demand wire transfers to bypass insurance." We slept in separate bedrooms for 3 days. The tension was agonizing. David was desperately trying to figure out how to claw back the non-refundable flight money, while I spent every waking moment trying to crack Brenda's facade. Brenda, sensing my resistance, decided to escalate her campaign. She launched a GoFundMe titled Brenda's Battle for Life, setting the goal at $15,000. She linked it to her Facebook page, tagging David and me, effectively weaponizing our entire extended family and social circle against us. The donations started pouring in from terrified aunts, old high school friends, and sympathetic church members. Within 48 hours, she had raised $8,000. To cement her victimhood, she posted an update. It was a chemo day selfie. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria during my lunch break when the notification popped up on my phone. I opened the picture. Brenda was sitting in a medical waiting room. She was wearing a cheap, floral headscarf to simulate impending hair loss, though her eyebrows were perfectly penciled in. She had removed her makeup to look frail and sickly. Right next to her, towering over her shoulder, was a heavy metal 4-pole. A clear, yellowish fluid was dripping through the plastic tubing, taped directly into the vein on her hand. Her caption read, "Enduring the poison so I can make it to Switzerland. Please keep sharing my fundraiser. The clock is ticking." I stared at the screen. Something was violently, deeply wrong with the image. I didn't just casually glance at the photo. I downloaded the high-resolution file to my phone, pushed my half-eaten salad away, and zoomed in with the meticulous, clinical precision of a forensic examiner investigating a crime scene. First, I analyzed the background. She claimed to be at the high-end private oncology center across town, but I recognized that hideous, cerulean blue vinyl chair with the heavy, scratched oak armrests. I recognized the specific pattern of the beige linoleum floor tiles. And, most damning of all, in the background behind her head, was a framed watercolor painting of a lighthouse. I didn't just recognize it, I walked past it every single day. That painting was part of the public art gallery in the north annex of my exact hospital system. Brenda wasn't at a private oncology center. She was sitting in the third-floor waiting room of the podiatry and wound care clinic. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I zoomed in on the 4-pole. Traditional chemotherapy agents like doxorubicin or cisplatin are either bright red or totally clear, highly toxic, and usually administered through an implanted chest port, often shielded from light in dark bags. They are absolutely never administered via a peripheral hand in a public, unsecured waiting room. But the fatal flaw in Brenda's masterpiece wasn't the fluid. It was the window. Behind the 4-pole was a large, double-paned window looking out over the parking lot. The glare from the overhead fluorescent lights perfectly caught the plastic label on the back of the 4 bag, reflecting it backward into the glass. I took a screenshot, flipped the image horizontally in my editing app, applied a contrast filter, and read the bold black text printed on the label. It didn't say, oncology. It didn't list a toxic chemical compound. It read, Myers cocktail, hydration therapy. A Myers cocktail is a basic, over-the-counter mix of vitamin B12, magnesium, and saline. It is literally marketed as a hangover cure. I knew exactly where it came from. There was a private, mobile, drip spa van that regularly parked in the lower lot of our hospital, charging stressed-out nurses and hungover residents $60 a pop for vitamin hydration. Brenda had literally paid a mobile hydration nurse to stick an 4 in her hand, marched herself up to the podiatry waiting room after her appointment for that persistent, disgusting fungal nail infection she'd been complaining about for months, slapped a scarf on her head, and taken a deathbed selfie. That's when the real bombshell dropped. If she wasn't sick, what the hell was she raising asking $15,000 for. I opened my laptop right there in the cafeteria. I pulled up Google and typed in the exact phrasing Brenda had used at dinner: holistic alpine cell therapy Switzerland. 0 results. The clinic didn't exist. There were a few generic articles about stem cell research, but absolutely no medical trials matching her description. I sat back, my mind racing. Brenda wasn't a criminal mastermind. She was a vain, superficial woman who watched too much reality television. I altered the search parameters. I stripped away the medical jargon and searched for her core buzzwords: Swiss holistic body regeneration. On the third page of the search results, my screen illuminated with a pristine, glossy website. It wasn't a medical facility in the Alps. It was a luxury, high-end plastic surgery center called the Swiss Beauty and Med Spa. It wasn't located in Switzerland. It was located in Cancun, Mexico. I clicked on their pricing tab. My eyes scanned past the rhinoplasty and the liposuction, landing squarely on their premium, all-inclusive package. It was called the Total Body Lift. It included a full tummy tuck, breast reconstruction, aggressive liposculpting, and a 2-week recovery stay in a 5-star private villa with a dedicated nursing staff. The total cost of the package? Exactly $12,000. Factor in $3,000 for premium, first-class round-trip flights to Mexico, and you hit exactly $15,000. She wasn't trying to save her life. She had pre-booked a massive, multi-procedure, mommy makeover, using the GoFundMe money she was actively extorting from terrified relatives, and she wanted to drain my 10-year anniversary fund to cover the final balance before her non-refundable deposit expired. I didn't call David. I didn't confront Brenda privately. When you are dealing with a malignant narcissist actively engaged in federal wire fraud, you do not give them the opportunity to control the narrative or destroy the evidence. You burn their kingdom to the ground in broad daylight. I opened the GoFundMe page on my phone. The fundraiser was sitting at $8,400. I scrolled down to the comments section, which was flooded with "Praying for you, Brenda," and "You are a warrior." I cracked my knuckles, took a deep breath, and started typing from my verified, public Facebook account. So incredibly brave, Brenda. I had absolutely no idea the North Annex Foot and Ankle Clinic at my hospital started treating stage 4 terminal lung cancer with over-the-counter vitamin B12 hangover drips. Is the doctor performing your toenail fungus removal also going to be the one doing your $12,000 tummy tuck at the Swiss Beauty Spa in Cancun next month? Because stealing $8,000 from our family members under the guise of terminal cancer is definitely a choice. I didn't stop there. I attached a direct link to the hospital's public art gallery website, specifically highlighting the lighthouse painting and the ugly blue podiatry chairs behind her head. Then, I attached the screenshot of the 4-bag reflection, digitally enhanced and circled in bright red ink. Finally, I linked the pricing page of the Cancun Plastic Surgery Center. I hit post. I sat in the cafeteria, eating my salad, watching the digital explosion happen in real time. Within 5 minutes, my phone started buzzing violently against the table. I ignored the calls. I watched the comments under the GoFundMe shift from thoughts and prayers to absolute, unhinged chaos. Aunts were demanding their money back. Cousins were tagging David, asking what the hell was going on. 10 minutes later, the screen on my phone lit up with David's face. I answered it. "Leah, what did you just post?" he demanded, his voice trembling with a mixture of terror and utter confusion. "My phone is exploding. Mom is hysterical. She just called me screaming that you're trying to ruin her life. Check your messages, David," I said, my voice as cold and hard as concrete. "I just sent you the enhanced photos. I sent you the pricing package for the Mexican plastic surgeon. Your mother doesn't have cancer. She has a toenail infection and a desperate need for a tummy tuck. She is a fraud, David. And she used your love for her to try and steal our anniversary." The line went dead silent. I could hear his ragged, heavy breathing over the speaker. I knew he was looking at the photos. I knew his entire reality was fracturing into a million pieces. "I have to go," he whispered, his voice cracking with a devastating finality. He hung up. 30 minutes later, the GoFundMe page vanished. The platform's automated fraud detection system, likely triggered by a mass influx of reports from angry family members, immediately flagged the campaign for criminal misrepresentation. The $8,400 she had collected was frozen and instantly queued for a mandatory clawback refund to every single donor. Her plastic surgery fund was entirely annihilated. But the true climax of this disaster hadn't even peaked. While Brenda was frantically trying to delete her Facebook page and fielding furious phone calls from her sisters, David's father, Brenda's husband of 30 years, a quiet, hard-working man who had been completely blindsided and devastated by her terminal diagnosis, arrived home from work. David had called him, utterly broken, and explained the photo. My father-in-law didn't ask her for an explanation. He walked straight into their bedroom, grabbed Brenda's heavy, oversized knitting bag from the closet, the one she aggressively guarded and carried everywhere, and dumped it out onto the mattress. Hidden beneath the yarn and knitting needles was a glossy, heavy stock folder from the Swiss Beauty and Med Spa. It contained her flight itineraries to Cancun, her signed surgical consent forms for the total body lift, and a printed invoice showing the exact remaining balance of $15,000. My phone rang. It was Brenda. I answered it, putting it on speakerphone, setting it on the table. "You ruined my life," she screamed, her voice a shrill, completely unhinged shriek of pure, narcissistic rage. "You jealous, vindictive little b***tch. That money was freely donated. It was a holistic health retreat. You broke my family apart. Richard is packing his bags. He's leaving me. I know exactly what you are," I whispered, leaning down toward the microphone, letting the absolute venom in my voice bleed through the speaker. "You aren't a victim, Brenda. You're a predator. And if you ever speak to me or my husband again, I won't just post it on Facebook. I will personally hand your fraudulent GoFundMe data over to the Federal Wire Fraud Division. Enjoy the toenail fungus." I hung up and permanently blocked her number. The fallout was catastrophic and deeply satisfying. My father-in-law filed for divorce the very next morning, citing irreconcilable differences and financial infidelity. He moved out of their massive suburban home and into a small apartment, leaving Brenda to face the wrath of an entire extended family that she had actively tried to defraud. Because the GoFundMe funds were intercepted before she could transfer them to her private bank account, the police declined to press formal criminal charges, viewing it as a platform dispute. But the social execution was absolute. She was entirely excommunicated. As for David, the betrayal broke something fundamental inside of him, but it also woke him up. He spent 3 days in a deep, agonizing depression, mourning the mother he thought he had, and processing the monster she actually was. He apologized to me. He wept, holding me in the kitchen, apologizing for ever doubting my instincts, for ever taking her side over mine. 2 weeks later, we didn't cancel anything. We packed our bags, boarded our first-class flight, and flew to Italy. The Amalfi Coast was everything we had dreamed it would be. The water was a brilliant, sparkling sapphire, the food was incredible, and the weight of the last 3 weeks completely melted away under the Mediterranean sun. While we were sitting on the balcony of our cliffside villa in Positano, overlooking the ocean and sipping icy glasses of local limoncello, I received an email notification. It was a PDF attachment from a discount strip mall lawyer Brenda had hired. It was a formal, cease and desist letter, demanding I stop defaming her character, and spreading malicious falsehoods regarding her medical history. I didn't panic. I laughed. I laughed so hard my stomach ached. I printed that incredibly pathetic legal threat on high-quality, heavy stock paper when we got back to the States. I bought a beautiful, expensive cherry wood frame. That letter now sits proudly on my desk at the hospital, right next to my forensic nursing credentials, a permanent reminder to never ignore my instincts. Am I the monster here, or did she get exactly what she deserved?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.